There's quite a number of books available on Stuckism now. In 1999 there were 0 books, and now there's quite a few. I think probably the first one was this book called The Stuckists, which was funded by a firm called Superhumanism. It's got the manifestos, it's got work by various people. In fact, it's got work by the first 12 Stuckists. Harder to obtain now, but is still available. We then had a rather nice book out from the Walker Art Gallery in Liverpool. That was the Stuckist Punk Victorian. That was to go with a show that was taking place at the Walker Art Gallery 2004 to 2005. There's a lot more artists in here. It represented international artists. The original group of 12, I think most of them were in this show, and other people who had come along, such as Paul Harvey, who wasn't in the group originally but is now one of the mainstays of Stuckism. This is a great book. You can certainly get this. In fact, you can get this rather cheaply nowadays. Go West is not quite such a easily obtainable book. It was a catalogue for a show that took place at the Spectrum London Gallery, which was funded by David Roberts, whose David Roberts Foundation is a massive art collection, and the Stuckists are in it along with all the Brit artists, Jake and Dinos Chapman, etc. David Roberts has a very Catholic taste, and it embraces people like Philip Absalon. I don't know, actually Philip Absalon isn't in it. Joe Machine certainly. I'm in it. David Roberts certainly liked Joe Machine's work, and he thought, he thought Philip Absalon's work was rather quirky and funny, but I don't think he ended up acquiring one of those. This was written by Dr. Robert Janas in the Czech Republic. It was an angle on Stuckism, more from an academic point of view, analysing the work, the content, the approaches, and he came up with a kind of cross. One part of the cross was the kind of intellectual approach, from a more sort of punk down to a more analytical, and the other part of the cross was the aesthetic approach, from rather more tight work to painterly work, and people could have different permutations of that. Stuckism International it's called, and it does do an international survey, starting off with the UK where Stuckism began, and let me see, what does it do? It has expansion on the continent, Stuckists from the academies, exotic Stuckism in the East, people like Azim Butt in Pakistan, for example, and Hamid Danavi in Iran. That's some of the Iranian work. That's Hamid Danavi's work, just there. Well worth getting, and easily available, published by Victoria Press. The Antidote to the Ghastly Turner Prize is a catalogue, or a book really, that was brought out on the occasion of this show at the View 2 Gallery in Liverpool, and it's a compendium of writing about Stuckism, as well as of course the people in the show, which was in this case UK Stuckists. There's John Bourne's work. What have we got there? That's Ella Garou's work. There's a whole load of stuff, manifestos, texts, bits of Paul Harvey's MA thesis about Stuckism, quotes about Stuckism, quotes about the Turner Prize, historical section, short stories from some of the Stuckists, and quite an extended section on Ella Garou's painting The Last Supper. That's a detail from it, and there's a coloured picture of it here with a key to all the people. That's the picture, and that's the key. The Last Supper, obviously based on Leonardo, is the Stuckists basically. The original group down the front and all the rest in different places in the background. Lots of motifs, paintings, little objects that are relevant. And there's so much in it, we had to do an extended interview for about 20 pages to ask Ella, what does this mean, what does that mean, how did you start it, you know, where did you get the subject, or where did you do the research, etc, etc. So I would say it's a fairly definitive rundown on Ella Garou's The Last Supper. This was another show, it's one we held at Lauderdale House in Highgate. The title, The Enemies of Art, was originally something which was in a text by Jonathan Jones, the Guardian art critic, on his blog, and he called the Stuckists the Enemies of Art. And Darren Udian, one of the Stuckists, picked up on that and staged a show in Cambridge called The Enemies of Art. And I thought that was actually far too good to just go with one show in Cambridge, so we staged another show in London called The Enemies of Art. It was an international show. It highlighted 4 artists from the Czech Republic and 4 artists from the UK, and it also included a whole host of other artists from around the world. There's Wolf Howard there. That's called Super Powerless, and obviously shows 9/11 with the superheroes Batman being unable to stop that tragedy. And that's a version by Abby Jackson, again, of a kind of fairy tale gone wrong, turned into a suicide bomber. There's pictures throughout the book. There's a section of photography. There's Eamon Everall and Jonathan Kudrill. Very nice production, a Victoria Press again, and biographies of, you know, a whole host of different artists. There's Paul Harvey and Joe Machine. That's available too. Those are books exclusive about Stuckism, and, you know, kind of essential really. They're seminal texts. If you're interested in Stuckism, get those books, or at least go to Amazon and have a look inside on the books. There's various other interesting presences of Stuckism. It sort of creeps in various places. One of the first books, I think this is about 2000 or 2001, something like that, was Styles, Schools and Movements by Amy Dempsey. And at the back there's 200 key styles of modernism, and Stuckism is one of those 200 key styles. And I'm going to kind of tell you my joke here, but I shouldn't really, but I'm going to, because my joke is that she got up to 199 and she couldn't think of anything else, and then suddenly she thought of Stuckism, but that's kind of doing Stuckism down, so I shouldn't say that, but pretend you didn't hear that, please. Stuckism is defined in the Tate Guide to Modern Art terms. Perhaps rather surprising, as the Tate doesn't think it's worth including any Stuckist work in its collections, but it does think it's worth defining what Stuckism is nevertheless in its Guide to Modern Art terms. So a bit of a contradiction there, but I'm not complaining. Stuckism is in the Concise Dictionary of Art Terms, published by Oxford. 2nd edition. A somewhat derogatory definition of Stuckism, which kind of turns its nose up, but nevertheless obviously thinks that Stuckism is something that is worth a nose being turned up to. So okay, fine, turn your nose up, we can take it to you too. This is rather more complimentary in both senses of the word. Penguin Modern Classics, 100 Artists' Manifestos, from the Futurists to the Stuckists. There's actually 3 Stuckist manifestos in here. There's the original Stuckist manifesto, which I wrote with Billy Childish. in 1999. There's a remodernist one, which Billy and I wrote in 2000 as a rebuttal of postmodernism. And the book ends very neatly with a manifesto, a Stuckist manifesto, written exactly 100 years after the publication of the Futurist Manifesto. And this was actually, well, it's called The Founding Manifesto and Rules of the Other Muswell Hill Stuckists. Very grand. And the editor, Alex Danchev, comments here, the other Muswell Hill Stuckists have a sense of humour. I think just as one of the classic lines in the original Stuckist manifesto was "artists who don't paint aren't artists," one of the classics in here, if I can find it, is point 19. YBA means you'll believe anything. Yeah, so there. Let's just have a quick look at a couple of other things. Contemporary British Art, an introduction by Grant Pook, has about half a chapter on Stuckism, and has a painting by Philip Absalon in the colour section, which I can't find, so probably won't bother, but he's up there, is Philip, alongside, oh there we go, here's the colours, Philip Absalon's Job Club at the top, which is kind of rather interesting. As a couple of pages on, down the bottom, we have Tracy Emin's tent. Philip was, years ago, when Tracy was in our entourage and we called ourselves the Medway Poets and she was a fashion student, Philip knew her, except I don't think she's kind of all that keen on knowing him now, so it's rather ironic that Grant Pook has reunited them. Well done, Grant. If you go abroad, Paul Ardennes is a very well-known French art historian and critic, and in his book Art, or Art le Présent, which, excuse my French accent, I think I can work out means art the present, and my painting of Sir Nicholas Serota behind a large pair of knickers, this one in fact, pops up here, actually alongside something by Tim Noble and Sue Webster down the bottom of the page. So I'm sure they're very pleased to have my painting next to theirs. Before we finish, let's round up here. There's a DVD which you can get, not quite sure how to get it, probably from Edgeworth, Johnstone. Well worth getting. People like Joe Machine, Bill Lewis, Paul Harvey and so on talking about Stuckism, and actually for that matter Stella Vine talking about Stuckism when she was just joining Stuckism and was enthusiastic before she became a bit disillusioned and unenthusiastic. Here we have a book by Edgeworth Johnstone and his wife Shelley Lee, stuck near Tate Modern, because they had a show near Tate Modern. Oh, here's Shelley, Chinese, looking very, I don't know, whatever she looks, chuchi. And that's one of her paintings there, yeah. Somebody on a swing. She does kind of slightly sexy paintings. Oh, here's one of them. Look, this sold recently, I think. There we go. This is Shelley for you. Look at that. Woman with a whip. I know Paul, whenever I see him, Paul's always shifting around very uncomfortably on a chair as if his bottom aches and a lot. So I don't know what that could be about. Oh, and we have Sir Peter Blake. Pops up in this book. Oh, actually with me, come to think of it. There we go. There's Peter Blake. Great guy. Tends to stand up at the Turner Prize when he was invited to present the prize and say, oh, I was invited to protest by the Stuckists against this, which I'm sure went down very well with the Tate Gallery, but I don't think he really cares. He wants to speak his mind, and I don't blame him, because I feel the same way. Anyway, this is a very interesting book, obviously mainly about Shelley and Edgeworth, but also about other things such as Enid Blyton's sofa. So if you want to find out how that relates to them, get this. And so it's got great paintings in, of course, wonderful paintings by them. Here's a couple. Oops, let's have a look at that. There we go. That's by Edgeworth. Ah, Stuck. You see, everybody calls their things Stuck, which obviously is, you can tell what that is. And, it's very funny. Well, it's probably not funny anymore, but it's just like you keep on, you know, you just keep on telling it like a joke that you like to keep on telling, really. There we go. This one's not stuck near Tate Modern, this is stuck in the emotional landscape, and again it is two artists. This time it's Jiří Hauška and Jaroslav Valejka, who are from the Czech Republic, and it's a book of a show they had in South London. It's got their work in there. That's Jiří's work, and Jaroslav does rather mysterious landscapes. Let's find one of his mysterious landscapes. Oh, what do we have here? Okay, look, there's a shooting star. There's a shooting star. There's a kind of something else. That's a sunset or a sunrise. These wonderful Moravian snowy scenes. Last but not least, Ruth Dudley Edwards, journalist, novelist, has just come out with her latest satire called Killing the Emperors. The emperor being the person who had no clothes. In this case, the emperors being the art world elite, the art world establishment. And this is just an advance copy which was sent to me. There's a picture of Ruth. There we go, Ruth Dudley Edwards. And there's a lot about Stuckism in here. It talks about for example, two of the characters talk about the open letter which was sent to Sir Nicholas Serota, and the Remodernist Manifesto which was sent to Sir Nicholas Serota, and one of the characters kind of says, well, what did he say? And the other character says, oh, he said, oh, you won't be surprised, I've got no comment to make. And the first character says, what a shit. I couldn't possibly comment.